Gabby, can we get a roll call?
Trustee Tarpley,
Here.
Trustee Henderson,
Here.
Trustee Brady,
Here.
Trustee Pinkerton,
Here.
Trustee Wood, Trustee Wood,
Did he step
Here.
off? Okay, sorry.
Superintendent President Dan Walden.
Here.
Okay, and then we're going to have the Pledge of Allegiance. If anybody wants to volunteer that's actually in the room with a flag, that would be optimal.
I'll volunteer.
Thank you so much.
Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, and then a report out of closed session. We began closed session at 5:08 p.m. Where we did an evaluation of the president, and we closed closed session at adjourned closed session at 5:37 p.m. I don't know if you could hear me.
We heard you.
All I see is Brandon.
And the dog.
Oh, and the dog.
Public
Okay.
comments?
So are there any public comments related to, not, to the agenda? Non-agenda items, sorry. I hate doing this on Zoom, by the way.
No, none.
Okay, so now we're gonna do our board workshop. So Dan, go ahead and do your introduction.
All right, so we had a wonderful opportunity this last summer to have Gary Schollinger meet with the President's leadership team up in the mountains, and all of you came by, at least for some part of the time, but you didn't get to hear or be part of any of his presentation. Now, since then, we have worked with the college and our management team, so they traditionally met on their own, and one of the things that came out of our retreat in the summer was if we were going to really get the educational master plan done, that all of management, and I'm speaking of the supervisors, those that supervise, we have managers that don't supervise anyone, but the supervisors would need to be connected directly with me. So I worked with them over several months. There was not one dissenter. They all agreed that I would start leading the management meetings. So we've actually just merged, at least for now, the President's leadership team with what we call the supervisors team. So, and you may hear us miscall it management because that's what they've traditionally referred to themselves as, but this group does not include confidentials such as Gabby, although it does include Gabby because she's our admin support, but doesn't include Michelle and others like her that don't have anyone reporting to them. Anyway, Gary was back today to make sure that all of our managers are on the same page and talking to us about what it means to have a entrepreneurial mindset. So this is a way of changing the culture of the college so that we can get the things done that we need to get done. Peter Drucker said that culture eats strategy for lunch. Others quote him as saying it for breakfast, but it does better. Culture eats strategy. And if you don't change culture, nothing really changes. And so with that, I'll let Gary tell you a little bit more about what he does and how he got to be what he is. But he is a he speaks all over the world, very much in demand all over the United States. He's done work in many countries, and I'm sure he'll tell you a little bit about that. I would like for you to do that, Gary. And so I think we're honored and we're privileged to have him here tonight. And so I wanted the board to be on the same page as the college, and the college to be on the same page as the board. So if you hear us talking and you hear the college referring to things about the entrepreneurial mindset, you will be in tune as a board, which I think you should be, with what the college is doing and how it's thinking. And so with that, Gary, I'll turn it over to you. He's very interactive. He doesn't mind you stopping him and asking questions and commenting along the way. He loves that kind of engagement.
Yep.
So feel free to just be casual with him tonight. And Gary, it's great to have you.
Thank you, Dr. Walden. And thank you, everyone, for inviting me here. And I want to reiterate what Dr. Walden just said. I would like to make this conversational. I don't want to stand up here and lecture to you. I want to just give you a little bit of the background about the work that I do, what my interest has been. Over the last 30 years, I've been studying the entrepreneurial mindset, not necessarily as a business discipline, but as a way of thinking that can empower people to adapt and thrive in a rapidly changing world. So, I've done an extensive amount of research. I've gone around the country interviewing hundreds of what I would call everyday entrepreneurs. I'm not necessarily interested in understanding what Elon Musk is doing. I wanted to understand how ordinary people recognize ideas, how do they bring these ideas to life when they don't have access to venture capital, when they're not necessarily geniuses or Harvard MBAs. So, I'd like to give you a brief overview of my work, broadly speaking, and then I want to talk a little bit more about the work that we're doing with Dr. Walden to introduce the entrepreneurial mindset as a change agent and to identify people in the college who will embrace this way of thinking to become early adopters and help to bring about, not necessarily bring about change for change's sake. I want to be careful how I say that, but it's more about people that I can identify new ways of doing things and improving on what we're already doing. So, the basic premise of my work is that the world has changed in ways that now require all of us to be more innovative and entrepreneurial. I'm not trying to say we should all start businesses. I'm trying to say we need to think like entrepreneurs. And I'm going to get into what I mean by that. But another way of thinking about this is that the mindset that once enabled us to succeed within stable conditions is insufficient within dynamic stability, and that's really the big takeaway. Now, what is that mindset that once enabled us to succeed? For lack of a better term, I'm going to call it the managerial mindset. Right? We need management. This is really important. I want to be very, very clear on this. We're not saying everybody be entrepreneurial all the time. I'm not advocating anarchy. I'm saying we now need both. We need people to be innovative and entrepreneurial. We need people to be managerial. And we need to figure out how those two things can fit together. That's really what my work is, and that's what I do. I work with academic institutions, organizations, governments, and corporate clients around the world to sort of figure out and teach how to do this. So I'm going to briefly go through this theoretical construct. That's the basic of my work, and I'm going to make it very, very brief. So this idea of transformation theory is an idea to help us understand both the nature of change within any system, but also to help us distinguish entrepreneurial behavior from managerial behavior. So I'm going to jump right in. This was developed by a guy named Dr. George Land. What he's saying is that in every living system there are three phases of change. There's a discovery phase, there's a growth phase, and there's an obsolescence phase. Sometimes the obsolescence phase becomes a reinvention phase. But what Land is saying is that there's no escaping these three phases. What he's also saying is that each phase requires separate rules for survival. This is really key here. Each phase requires distinct rules for survival, And the trick to survival is to understand which phase you are in so that you know which rules to apply. So these little orange dots represent what he calls break points. They're the moments in time when the rules for survival change. So as humans, it basically looks like this. In the discovery phase, we learn how to become useful. That typically happens through formal education. The first orange dot is when we graduate, we go out into the world. We've got our degree, our diploma, certificate, whatever. We show it to an employer. We got our first job and we're off. Now we go out into the world and we actually become useful. And we grow by replicating and improving upon the useful thing that we learned during the discovery phase. Then at some point, the growth starts to slow. Key point here. At some point, the growth starts to slow, and that's the indication that we've hit the second break point, where we're either going to become obsolete, or we're going to reinvent ourselves. The problem is, it occurs at the second break point, where we typically respond inappropriately to the slowed growth. This is part of the human condition, right? When the growth happens, we tend to become angry, we blame, we want to go backwards. And I think we talked about this today. One of the most common inappropriate responses to the slowed growth is to actually double down on prior beliefs. And this is where the mindset comes into play here, right? We tend to, the growth starts to slow, so we try to squeeze more juice out of the lemon we've got. We go into what Land called a siege mentality. We jettison non-essential personnel, non-essential projects, and it gives us this momentary sense of relief, because the numbers look good for a minute. But ultimately, it's a fatal flaw in the thinking, because we're actually delaying the time. We're losing the opportunity to reinvent. I would use Kodak as an example of that. They full well knew that digital photography was here. They invented it. But they were clinging to a way of doing business that was profitable until it was too late. As Dr. Land himself said, like nothing fails like success. And this is the key point that I'd like to really drive home that Land made, is that the mindset that was absolutely essential for success in that second column during the growth phase is the mindset that will prevent us from adapting. The longer we've been in column 2, the more successful we've been in column 2, the more we're going to struggle to adapt in times of change. That's one of the big ideas behind this idea of transformation theory. So the question becomes, how do we learn how to make ourselves useful when the rules are not clear, the path is not established? Like, how do we go outside of known systems and make ourselves useful? That's what entrepreneurs are best suited to do. And so this is part of the work we've been doing, over the last 2 sessions with the leadership team here at the college, is helping them understand what I would call the entrepreneurial discovery process. And unlike traditional discovery, which happens in an institution guided by professional teachers with an established curriculum, predictable paths, predictable outcomes, and so forth, the entrepreneurial discovery process is not like that at all, and it requires completely different attitudes, behaviors, and skills. And I'm pointing that out. Much higher degree of ambiguity, resource constraint, you don't have your parents paying the bills anymore, right? Those are conditions that are essential for developing this entrepreneurial mindset. Lots of ambiguity and uncertainty, resource constraint. Those are the ideal conditions within which an entrepreneurial mindset will catalyze, so to speak. So how do you what are the rules for survival if you have to go outside of known systems? You've got a sharp stick and some baling wire. You're going to step out in the world with your stick, and you're going to try to figure out how to make yourself useful to other humans. That requires attitudes and skills that as humans we are innately equipped for. They're attitudes and skills that have historically been discouraged or ignored within an industrial era managerial paradigm where we don't need people with discovery skills, we need people with delivery skills. And that's really one of the fundamental differences between entrepreneurial and managerial. Entrepreneurial is discovery, managerial is delivery. And one of the points I'd like to make is that the attitudes and skills required to discover an opportunity are distinct from the attitudes and skills required to exploit that opportunity. Two different things. Okay, so how do you survive in that? Well, you need problem-finding skills. Not that difficult, they're detective skills. Right? That requires empathy, curiosity, observing, like what's missing, why are we doing it this way? How can we make this better? Just simple questions. Problem-solving skills, creativity, critical thinking, experimentation, collaboration, network, teamwork, resourcefulness, communication skills, and self-direction. Right? Out in entrepreneurial discovery, you don't have someone else to tell you what to do and when to do it and how to do it. There are no clear answers. There's not a book you can pull off the shelf. It'll tell you on page 332, there's the answer. Requires self-direction. That's sort of an overview of the entrepreneurial paradigm, let's say. And one of the points that we've been talking through today especially is that it's almost impossible, let me just say it's highly unlikely that a person will develop entrepreneurial attitudes and skills within a managerial paradigm. Right?
I think, as you've been talking, Gary, the word that keeps coming to my head, I mean, I live this all the time, my survival this all the time. It's the fear of the unknown. If you have a fear of the unknown, you will never be able to break through that. Because you're always in fear. You have to break the fear, and then literally, I mean, it's like walking over the edge of a cliff, and standing there and absolutely saying to yourself, am I going to fall?
That's it.
Until you get there, I don't care how many classes, I don't care what you go through. It's that fear of the unknown that, and I had to go through it to survive. So I know exactly what it was a fear.
You said something really important in your comments, though. You can't develop an entrepreneurial mindset by taking classes. You can't acquire an entrepreneurial mindset through traditional means, through knowledge transfer. And this is a big part of the work that we're doing. It's an adaptive, the entrepreneurial mindset's an adaptive mindset. And you can't solve adaptive problems with technical skills, which is what most of us are trying to do. That's what the skills gap is all about.
You also have to understand that losing is good. Getting your ass kicked.
I didn't talk to him. I never.
You didn't?
I didn't cue him up anything, right?
No, but as I'm watching this, people have a fear, and they get a fear of getting their ass kicked.
They get a
I'm
flick-
better after I get my ass kicked than I do when I'm depositing a big amount.
But yeah, you know, in my view, you're trading the fears. Because there's other fear about just going to a job every day. There's other there to going to a job every day that you don't like, that you don't really want to contribute. You just, you know what I mean? You just pick your poison, right? So in a nutshell, what I'm trying to illustrate here is the difference between an entrepreneurial paradigm and a managerial paradigm. And you can't develop entrepreneurial attitudes and skills.
I'm sorry, Joe, can you remember to use your mic because Brandon and Jennifer can't hear you?
Oh. He couldn't hear the bad things I said about him?
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry, Brandon.
So the point that I'm trying to make here is this the context is different. And if you understand the context, it's much easier to understand the behavior. But if you ignore the context, you're never going to get the behavior. That's point number one. Point number two is that it's almost impossible to develop entrepreneurial attitudes, behaviors, and skills in a managerial paradigm. What do I mean by managerial paradigm? When someone it's other-directed, it's routinized, it's based on productivity and efficiency and outcomes and measurements and those things. In that environment, it's almost impossible to develop an entrepreneurial mindset.
And
So
where
we
I
got-
was so impressed today with what you said, and he referred to this several times today, we're not going to solve the enrollment problem here with that managerial mindset. It's not going to happen.
Not going to happen.
Because there's that fear. And the thing I see, I deal with government all day, every day. And if we're dealing on a land use issue, you know, I love the planning person that says, well, this is how we got to do it. Then I've been in the room where there's a planning guy that says, you know what, let's try this. Really? Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, because that's real life. The challenge is, I think, in government, and I even think in education, there's no incentive to think outside the box because there's no reward to think outside the box. And and sometimes what I have found in government, and again, deal with them all the time, if somebody's really good in government, those that are not good in government want to squash them. Because those sometimes good in government outshine those that are just kind of cruise along.
That's
till
right.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, you know, I've done some work extensively with the city of Albuquerque and training 6,000 city government workers how to think like entrepreneurs. And it absolutely blown my mind. What's the opposite of an entrepreneur in your mind? It's a city government worker, right?
Yeah.
Unbelievable. And the ones that have embraced it the most were the guys like this. I'm not a classroom guy, I don't want to take this class. And day 2, day 3, he all of a sudden woke up as a sanitation supervisor, figured out how to save the city $250,000 a year. Right? It's like, the point that I want to draw from this comment is, we are overlooking talent that's sitting right underneath our feet because the managerial mindset doesn't let it out.
We don't encourage it.
Okay. So, and I validated that in my interviews, in my research with entrepreneurs, and I was saying today in the session today, very often I'm interviewing entrepreneurs who are doing, you know, they're not billionaires, but they're doing interesting things. They're employing people. They're making things happen. And I can't really detect any brilliance, any charisma, any creative genius or anything. They're ordinary people. Right? Okay, let me move on. So, my definition of entrepreneurship, which took me 25 years to arrive at, is the self-directed pursuit of opportunity to create value for others. And by creating value for others, we empower ourselves. There's a lot to unpack here, but this is a simple definition that anyone can embrace, whether they work in a college, whether they work at a Subway sandwich shop, whether they want to change the world. It's a simple definition, but the second part of the definition alludes to the idea that we empower ourselves. The more useful we become, the better off we're going to be. So the question I pose to the leadership team today is what's stopping you from making yourself more useful to more humans? That's the question. That's a mindset question. Think about that. What's stopping you?
Sometimes society.
Sometimes. But sometimes it's our mindset. So I define a mindset as a pattern of beliefs, assumptions, and mental models that we learned that has worked well enough to be considered valid and therefore assumed to be the correct way to think and feel. And that's sort of the reverse engineering of the classic definition of culture. Because culture is a collective mindset. Mindset is our individual culture, however you want to look at it. So, what shows up on the surface, then you have your explicit knowledge, your espoused values. This is what I say I know and I say I believe. But typically what shows up on the top of that iceberg is our deeply held beliefs, values, and assumptions, right? What you do speaks so loudly I can't hear what you say is the basic idea here. So the basic thing that the overview of the work that I've been doing with Dr. Walden here at the college is to identify innovators, people that want to solve, that want to roll up their sleeves and solve problems. Like, let's identify the innovators among us and the leadership team. Let's expose them to the entrepreneurial process. And this is a process I've gleaned from more than a decade of research in the observations of entrepreneurs, of everyday entrepreneurs. It's not theoretical, it's a very practical, hands-on approach to identifying, solving problems. Step 3 is to create the adaptive spaces that are conducive to this kind of behavior. Right? So that's the hard part, right? We've got to create some space where the managerial paradigm won't descend upon the entrepreneurial and try to kill it. We've got to help the managerial folks, and we need them. We've got to help the managerial folks understand we can't just keep doing what we're doing and expecting different results. We're going to fly the plane right into the side of a mountain. We've got to start innovating, and we don't need to look outside for innovation. We're capable of ourselves. But we got to help the entrepreneurial folks appreciate the managers, because you need both. It's not one or the other. So then step 4 is to actually immerse them in the process, and that's what we started today. We're encouraging these teams to identify and solve problems in their sphere of influence with the resources they currently control in the margins. We're asking them to use some small modicum, 5%, of their discretionary thought, time, effort, resources, experimenting on the margins, what we call micro-experimenting. Reduce the cost of failure, increase the likelihood that you'll find a solution. And then the 5th phase is to provide ongoing mentoring, coaching, support to give these projects some coaching to help the initial projects take life. If we can get 2 or 3 projects to land and impact, then it'll start to catch on and take off in a broader way in the college. The idea here is that the desire to be innovative and entrepreneurial is innate. That all human beings are at the same time growth-oriented, opportunity-seeking. At the same time, we're stability-seeking, uncertainty-avoiding. And I think to your point, most of us just default to the former and ignore the latter. Did I get that right?
Yeah.
Right? The default to the latter and ignore the former. That's right. Or because the environment, like you get punished for it. Right? I mean, you get punished for coming up with new ideas or saying stupid things or whatever. You need the psychological safety, you need the autonomy support, so that, and that's the point really that I wanted to make, is that if we create some space and we encourage the behavior, that innate tendency for exploration will come out and the college will benefit from it.
But if the leadership does not promote that,
I won't work with an organization without the CEO buy-in. I won't do it. It's a waste of time.
okay, but I'm sure, Gary, you've been around organizations where they're so large that the CEO, is buffered by his team,
Yeah.
and everybody's working their way on up. So it really has to start at the top. But I believe sometimes it really needs to be nurtured from the bottom all the way on up, because otherwise,
It's both.
yeah,
It's top down, bottom up.
It's just a bunch of lip service.
100%. You're spot on. It's got to be bottom up and top down at the same time, right? I did some of this work in the 12th largest corporation in the world, which is Cisco.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, it's got to be bottom up, it's got to be top down. And there's champions and sponsors and people throughout the organization that play a role. They're not necessarily the innovators, but they're playing support roles, resource allocation, sponsor champions, to help bridge the managerial.
We deal with companies sometimes, we'll deal with the manager type, and all they do is block. They just block everything because
Management is all about no.
they just kind of block and you just kind of figure out a way to get around them.
That's right. That's exactly what I'm talking about, that it won't happen in a managerial paradigm. If you don't understand the paradigm, that's why the mindset piece is so important. If you're trying to do this in a managerial paradigm, it's going nowhere.
Because they feel like they own this territory or what.
And they try to kill the innovation because they think it's a waste of time. It's not productive.
It may not make, it makes them look bad.
Correct.
If somebody from the outside or even somebody below them, just on a quick thing, I sold one of our companies, my main company, to a public company back in '07. I was a director. I went to my third meeting and I sat there as a director and I thought, how the hell do you guys even make a dime? Because all you're doing is trying to kill each other. And I was the country boy from Victorville, bought by a public company. And one of the executive vice presidents said, I want Brady to handle this assignment. And a bunch of locals in LA went ballistic because you can't do that.
Right.
I sat there, how do you guys make any money? That's all you do all day long is kill each other.
Yeah.
And that's what you see a lot of organizations.
Yeah, entrepreneurship won't survive in that environment, right? So we walk folks through this process, the entrepreneurial process, which again, I've gleaned, this is a basic outline of a process we've gleaned from interviewing hundreds of everyday entrepreneurs. It's a 3-step process. Start with problem finding. That's probably the most important one, is actually finding a problem worth solving. There's nothing worse than an entrepreneur running down the hill with a sharp stick trying to solve a problem nobody cares about, right? Then it's about experimentation and adaptation. That's the problem-solving part. Once they have evidence of usefulness, and this is a really important point, this is an evidence-based process. It's not speculation. It's not writing business plans. It's experimentation and adaptation. Once there is evidence of usefulness, now it's about replication and implementation. So what we're saying to the team, the leadership team at the college is like, this is not, I have a good idea, I want to go to my boss and ask for money. Like, no, that's not how it works. You have an idea, in your discretionary time, you figure out how to design an experiment and prove the concept on a very small scale. And you don't come to your boss with the idea until you've got some sort of evidence that you've replicated that this is working, that this is useful. Now, back to the paradigm switch. What I need the managerial people to understand is that this discovery process is an error-based learning process. It's lots of little failures. That's why I keep using the word micro-experimentation, because we take small experiments and we learn from the results. It's an error-based process. It comes from like biomimicry. That's how an organism orients itself in uncertain conditions. Trying lots of little things. So the managers have to be aware there's going to be little micro failures happening. Micro. They're not going in the classroom and destroying things and, there's an error-based learning process that's essential to understand and embrace, develop a tolerance for. But here's the flip side. What we find is that when a person is encouraged to pursue her interests and abilities in ways that fulfill the needs of others, they become optimally engaged. So when you look at entrepreneurial people and wonder why they're so passionate, the process is a compelling process that we're naturally inclined to do. I guess what I'm trying to say is the bonus prize here is that we not only engage people in exploration and discovery, but we increase engagement of the people the leadership team. You get the engagement, increased engagement as well. So I'm going to end it right here. And I'm wide open for questions. Want to get you guys out of here on time. But this is going to require some patience. This is the work of Everett Rogers, like this is about adoption of new ideas. So we're looking for this 2.5%, I'm using round numbers here, but we're looking for this small group of innovators in the college. And they're here. Trust me, they're here. We saw it today. They're here. We want to work with them, coach them, mentor them, encourage these projects to bring their projects to life. And have them find the early adopters in the college. Small percentage of people that'll buy in early. The trick is that the early majority and the late majority are not going to buy in from the innovators. They need more social proof. So the trick is, I'm going to work with the innovators to help bring ideas to life, to find the early adopters, to champion these projects until then the early adopters are the ones that convince the early majority. It won't be the innovator. This is basically the idea of crossing the chasm. So the good idea, people think, oh, I got a great idea, I'm going to walk out and tell everybody, and they're going to just flock to my idea. It doesn't work that way. So it requires a little bit of patience. The early majority will buy in from the early adopters, right? We'll become the introductory agents, but the activating agents that activate the early majority will be the early adopters. Just saying, it takes a little bit of time. It's not something that's going to happen overnight. We need to get these early adopters and engage with them. So I'm going to just end it here. And the big point that I really want to make here is that we can't solve the problem with the same thinking we used when we created it. That's what I meant when I said the managerial mindset is no longer adequate. We can't just keep doing the same thing over and over and over again and expect to adapt in a complex world. It's called insanity. Thank you. So I'm happy to take questions. That's just a very brief overview of the work that we're doing here. And for me, it's really an honor to be here because I just think there's so much opportunity in community colleges to reinvent themselves. And I'm just honored to be part of Dr. Walden's team to be part
Gary has worked with a lot of many community colleges across the nation. So this isn't a new area for him, but he doesn't just work with community colleges. As he said, he's done stuff with civil municipalities and so on. I'd love for you to tell a little bit more about the Albuquerque story, because we had our new supervisors today from our M&O. This was their first time. So these folks were kind of promoted up through the college, and they are really good workers, CSEA workers that competed for the supervisor, day supervisor, night supervisor for M&O, and then our actual director of M&O. And this was their first time to be in any kind of a leadership kind of environment. And I think if you tell the story and talk about how you worked with those sanitation workers a little bit, and then how the city wanted you to work with all the employees of the city. But he started in Albuquerque with the sanitation workers with this. So thinking about how we get things done differently, it's just like we've all heard it. He just said it in one way. I think Dr. Phil says something like all the time, if you keep doing the same thing in the same way and expecting the same results, you're going to get called stupid or something. I don't know. It's insanity. And, we have, for example, here, we fail in first level math. Now, this was here before I got here, so I didn't cause it. But we fail over half of the students that take entry level math here. We have a over 55% failure rate. And that is not okay. I mean, is there anybody that thinks it's okay to advertise the college and say, oh, everybody come to LA, to VVC, and we'll help you be successful, and yet we're going to fail you in your first math course? Over half of you are going to fail. When I was told when I got here that we were in the bottom 10% in student outcomes in the state of California, you know, I've gotten a lot of, when I say a lot, I mean I have gotten systematic pushback on this idea of the Aspen Prize and why do we need to go to 8-week mini masters and the other innovative things that we've tried to think about and do. And it's like, okay, well then you tell me the answer. Because you're sitting here with these results, are you happy? Turning half of your students away
Right.
to failure?
Right.
I mean, a lot of them come to community college so desperate to succeed because they come from households that they were told they were no good by their parents who toxically shamed them. You know, maybe there was no father in the home, you know, and I'm talking about the kind of students we get here. These people are not going to Harvard. They're not blue blood Americans that, you know, everybody from 15th grandfather back went to an Ivy League school. They're high desert kids that come here wanting to succeed, and yet we make failures out of them. That is not okay.
Right.
And if you want to change enrollment, you get to be known as, look, when you come here, you're going to be a success. Now, we celebrate our successes. We graduated more students this last year than the college has ever graduated. But we should be graduating twice that many.
Yeah.
And unless we can pull out, I actually believe the brilliance is in the room. And I say that metaphorically to the college. The brilliance is in the room. We just have to wake it up. Our faculty are smart enough to figure out how to solve these issues. Our managers are smart enough to figure out how to solve these issues. And so I found a tool here. I use tools when I can find them because I was raised in the carpentry work, and that's how we built houses, using tools. So to me, Gary's a tool that I can use to help build this college. And I think we get really bang for our buck with him because if we can just get a few people to be those innovators and be committed to it, we'll change. I've seen this graph in a different way. I don't know if you've ever heard of Paul Gorsh, but he's a well-known scholar across the nation in higher education. And that study that you showed, the graph, that has been proven scientifically accurate over and over again by our great institutions of higher research learning in America. That's what they say, you only need 18% of the people in your college to really change the culture.
That's it.
The rest of them will come along. If you can get 18%
Which are the
passionately
innovators.
dedicated.
The 18% is the 15 and a half and the 2.5.
That's right. And so that's why I said I've seen that replicated, not in that graph, but in this way.
Yep, that's right.
And I mean, typically you see it at the 20-60-20, but then they'll also have the footnote about studies have shown that 17 to 18% is all you need. So I got really excited. The first time I heard Gary, I thought, man, we got to get this. You can come to work as an employee, and that's okay. Or you can come to work as an entrepreneur and think, how can I make this the best office on campus? How can I make this the best program on campus? How can we make this the best college in the nation?
Yep.
And think like an entrepreneur, like this is my college. I own this. These are my students. I'm going to make them successful. I'm going to do, the students you have, they walk through the doors, those are your students. You don't get to say, and I worked at a college years and years ago, not my last one, but one before that. And I was a dean, and one of the departments I was dean over was English, and we did some research, and I brought in a scholar from USC to help me, and she came and we presented our results and worked with them, and she spent 2 hours with them, and I walked her back to her car, and she said, you know what I just heard for the last 2 hours? Give me better students, and I'll give you better results.
Yeah.
We can't do that. John, we cannot do that. These are our students. We own these students. We have to make sure that they're successful. No, we can't do their studying for them, but most of them are coming here because they want to learn. And I'm jazzed about this. I'm passionate about this. I mean, maybe you heard me up at some of you might have heard me at the, and I don't say this all, in fact, this is only the second time I've said this publicly, but one of my greatest fears is that I'm going to die with this passion still inside of me. I do not want to die with this passion and this feeling like I have something else to share and something else to give and something to contribute that'll make a difference. I don't want to die with that still there. I want to give all that I can give, and I'll know when it's my turn to step aside, and if I don't know, I'm sure you'll tell me, because you're the board, but that's really where I come from on this.
Yeah, yeah. And everything that you said resonates. I mean, the talent is here. A lot of the work that we're doing is talent development work. I mean, that's kind of the new thing. People are trying to go find the rock stars everywhere. It doesn't work. The talent is right here. That's a big part of the strategy.
So it's how you nurture. It's how you nurture. And if it's not nurtured, you have every seminar and
We talked about this today. You know, there's some passionate people. I saw them today, man. They're ready. They're ready to go, man. They got a sharp. They're ready to go. If they are not, if we don't create the space for them to be adaptive, to be innovative and entrepreneurial, they will leave, and they will be replaced by people who are a little less passionate. That's what'll happen. That's why this work is so urgent in my view. Doesn't have to be everybody in the college. As Dr. Walden said, we need 18%. That's what we need. And I'm here to help coach and guide them to nurture that early flicker to help bring that to life. That's basically it.
Gary, do you think that there's any correlation in the this is the residential industry, and it's very similar. So I'm on the commercial side of real estate. 17% of us make 83% of the money. So it's kind of the same thing. Is yours 18%?
80-20.
Yeah.
I mean, it's Pareto. Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. Yep.
So, President Tarpley,
Yes, sir.
Oh, she didn't go to sleep.
No, sir.
so we're tossing the ball back to you. Gary's still here if you have anything you want to say, or you or Brandon have questions, or
No, I mean, I
Sharon
think
or
that was a
Dennis?
beautiful presentation. I took notes. You know, I think maybe it would be a little bit easier for me to be there in person and hear it, you know, where you feel the vibe and all that. But really great stuff. And I really appreciated your comments, Dr. Walden. It's so nice to see the passion, see it through the Zoom. That's worth anything, you know what I mean? So I can almost feel it in the Zoom, which is even more important. I think we definitely chose the right leader because I wasn't there yet, but chose the right leader and continue to choose the right leader. And I think you're doing a fantastic job in utilizing these tools, although I've never heard anybody use that word, call somebody that word, and it be turned as a compliment. Because usually when you call somebody a tool, it's not a compliment.
Thank you for picking up on that.
Yeah, I was like, oh!
Yeah. Are you calling me a tool?
I know, right?
Yeah.
well, you know,
No,
coming
really
from
good.
construction, tools don't build a house.
Right.
It's how you use them. Here's Gary, this incredibly intelligent person. I mean, he is in my opinion, one of the more intelligent people I've ever met in my life, and I've spent many hours with him. But he's not going to make things better just because I know him. I either use his knowledge and what he shares and learn and let him inspire me, and in that way is what I mean. That of course, I wouldn't dehumanize you to a
No, I'm
hammer or a nail.
Right.
Gary and I thought it was funny. No, thank you so much. Anybody else have anything they want to add to the conversation? Dennis, Sharon, Brandon?
No, I liked everything you had to say.
Good,
That was good.
good,
Outstanding.
good. I mean,
You have a member of the public speak?
I don't think anybody's going to be policing it tonight.
Well, you know, I go on Facebook, that's what old people do, and so I looked up this guy.
Whoever's talked and we can't hear him.
Yeah, not at all.
I think there's a mic right there.
Oh, it's John.
Can I get this?
You know, not unless Gary turns this off, because they're on the same channel.
You can do it.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so on Facebook, I looked up Gary, and he had a quote from somebody that I love, Warren Buffett. You know, raised in Nebraska, and I still have a lot of family in Omaha, including my dad, and we like Warren Buffett. And he's got this quote from Warren Buffett. "It is not necessary to do extraordinary things to get extraordinary results." So we don't have to, I don't know, I know about this entrepreneurship and everything, about thinking outside of the box, and Sharon can tell you that I've become quite adept at thinking outside of the box, and when we get better acquainted, you'll say, yeah, he thought outside the box a time or two in his life. But we don't have to reinvent the wheel all the time.
Right.
And I don't think we have to get all crazy refiguring how to do this. And this family is really big on enrollment at this college, because that's what's going to pay the bills. At the end of the day, that's what it is. We got a lot of one-time money that's what they used to call it, right? Businessman, one-time money. We had a lot of one-time money holding things together right now. But the bottom line is, this is an institution of higher learning. Students are what's going to drive this thing, and we got to get them. But I like that comment from Warren Buffett, and then a comment that Sharon and I always like to joke back and forth about from one of our favorite sports movies.
Remember the Titans?
Say it.
Attitude reflects leadership.
Attitude reflects leadership. Well, this is the leadership team right here. And this is the CEO of the leadership team. And whatever he does, that's what folks is going to do. So like anytime when we ask for, make concessions on money, whatever, hey, we can't do that with right now. This guy leads the way. He says, you know what? I'll take less too. Sharon and I, we feel that way. We would always take less if we were asking people to take less. And if we were asking for people to do more, then we're going to do more. Attitude reflects leadership. So thank you. I know I kind of barged in here, but it's not like this room's crowded. So
Yeah, Gary, share, because with what, John, by the way, is a former trustee. His wife took his place.
we met outside.
She got more votes than he did and got the job. So anyway, share what you shared today with our management team, because he really went after this thing, how people misinterpret the entrepreneurial mindset as everything has to be novel or new. But how you address that today?
yeah, thank you, Dr. Walden. It sort of speaks to your point, John. You know, people in what we'll call the entrepreneurial elitists, I'll call them, which is meant to be a little bit of a deriding comment. But they'll tell you that it's not entrepreneurial if it's not novel and useful. And I'm saying, like, right, settle down. You know, I don't really ascribe to that. The guy that mows my grass lives in a bigger house than I do. Let me just put it that way. Right? What is a coffee shop? Is a coffee shop novel? Starbucks. Is a discount variety store in the heyday of Woolworths novel? Well, it's called Walmart. I really don't buy into that at all. What we want people to do is discover new ways to make themselves useful to other people. It's not about making myself rich. It's about figuring out how to become more useful to other people. The more useful we become, the better off we're going to be. So and that's part of what I've defined in my description of the entrepreneurial discovery process. The discovery is not something discovering new to mankind. It's something someone has arrived at on their own. That's really the important piece of it.
Yeah, there's an old adage that found itself in the Bible, and it says in Proverbs, there's no new thing. Or maybe it's Ecclesiastes, one of those books over there. There is no new thing under the sun.
But there's another important point I want to bring up now that you're bringing up biblical quotes. You know, the talk you just gave, very passionate, the vision for the college. Like, everybody needs to hear that. And because that's what leadership is. And there's a quote somewhere in the Bible, I'm the last guy to be Bible quoting here, but where there is no vision, the people perish.
Yeah.
And that's what this work that you and I are doing here at the college is all about. It's about painting a picture of what this could be. And so we're orienting people's mindsets towards the future, towards a more positive future, and empowering them with the ability to become part of it. And I like to use this definition of hope. This is from hope researchers. This isn't from, a motivational speaker. The definition of hope is the belief that the future will be better than the present, coupled with the belief that I have the power to make it so. That's how we tap into the potential of the people in this college right here, right now.
Gary, let me ask you a question. I'm sure everybody on in here, we've all been to 500 seminars and PowerPoint presentations in our life. And how many times we walk away and go, wow, that was just incredible. I'm just absolutely motivated. And I go on home and I wake up tomorrow morning, what do? I revert back to the old habit. So I'm an ex-smoker. I smoked for 40 years. Every time I lit one up, I started. Every time I put one on, I quit. And finally, it got through my head that I had to quit. But it was changing that attitude. When I first came out here to this great institution, I sat down about 2 months after I was here with our then president superintendent, Dr. Christopher O'Hearn. And I said to him, Dr. O'Hearn, how can we incentivize our employees to do a better job? And he literally looked at me like, you're an idiot. We don't do that here, Joe. And I remember the look. I sat at his desk, and he looked at me like I was some stupid business guy. And I said to him, why do people get incentivized to go to work at Apple and Google and Microsoft? And why do they walk into a bathroom and they see a sign reminding them? A couple months later, I'm out having lunch with him. I said, doctor, we got a bad attitude around here. Why don't we put some signs up changing the attitude? Oh, God, hell no. That's stupid. I'll bet you if you went to Google or Apple's headquarters, everywhere you walk, they remind you who you are because they expect you to be the best because you are the best. So the question is, and I would challenge you, I would challenge our board. This has been great. But I'm afraid I'm going to leave here and say, God, that was really good. That was great. But what's going to change? Are we going to remind ourselves 30 days from now that we're great? Are we going to remind each other that we got to think out of the box? I damn near went bankrupt before I made any money.
Yep.
You know?
Yep.
I went 10 years without making a paycheck, 10 years. And I lived in fear all the time.
Yep.
You know, and I remember having, my wife said to me, Joe, you got to get a job.
Yep.
I go, honey, I got a job. Well, you ain't making any money. Well, then things change. But so the question I would ask Dr. Walden and I guess, you know, to my fellow trustees, what is going to be different tomorrow than it was today? I know tomorrow when I walk in the office, I have to think out of the box. I get challenged all the time because my clients, I have 100 clients and none of them are the same. And so I have to constantly be thinking, you know, how do I be that entrepreneur to that client? That's what they're paying me for.
Yeah, yeah.
And the ones I do better with are the ones that are always smarter than me. Because they really, they challenge you. And I don't think we get challenged enough here.
That's the problem. It's like the entrepreneurial behavior arises as the result of it's an adaptive response to an adaptive challenge.
Adaptive challenge
And we
here being the loss of enrollment. That is an adaptive challenge. So how are we going to adapt to that, getting those people back?
Correct.
Or we may not get them back, but how do we get the numbers back? And what bothers me more, John, because you could balance the budget on a smaller way if you wanted to, is just paying the bill.
It's balanced.
But yeah, it is, but my point is, we're here for students, and if we lose 25%, then we lost 25% of potential graduates. We're here to change lives. That means there's 25% less lives that are being changed.
What you're saying is you're becoming irrelevant.
Right.
Obsolete.
So if you don't, students don't complete if they don't come here. They don't persist if you never get them enrolled. And those are all outcomes that we're always pushing, but we will lose the outcomes if you lose the numbers. That's why there's 420,000 people or so in this high desert. We are the big pool. We're the big fish in the pond up here. It's not like LA where they're just down the street from one another. We are the only game in town, really. And so they're here. We might as well get them. That's why we're going after these 6,000 high school graduates this time with the goal of getting 60% of them in our fall 22 enrollment. And whether we reach that or not, we are going to do everything we can to get those students here next fall. We had 41% of them prior to COVID. And then we dropped and lost them over the COVID thing. The high schools wouldn't let us in the doors, so to speak. So I don't want to beat a dead horse, but I'm just saying what's going to be different tomorrow is that we're on a path. This is just, I wanted to expose the board tonight to what you could see what I'm doing at the college. I didn't just start this when I met Gary. I started this when I got here. And this is how I've been speaking to them, leading them. And I mean, Tim, you're sitting back there. Gabby, you're over there. Is this not how isn't this what you've been hearing from me for 3 years? So we are on a path that will change over time. We're not going to concede to the culture that says we can't do it, or this is the best, or we're satisfied with what we are. We should not be satisfied. We should be always trying to actualize the potential of this college in this community.
Then how do we, Doc? And I just want to say something to John. John, when I came on board, we had the GIC, and you remember we argued about the GIC? I couldn't wait for the GIC to be gone. Because the GIC was like, Gary, the GIC was the separate fund that everybody would like raid. They raided before I got here. They got nailed by the IRS for it. And I thought, let's spend that GIC, put it in every brick and mortar here, and it's gone. And now you've got to be an entrepreneur. Now you got to figure out how to get out of it. John, I think we all heed your comments. I was just bragging to somebody the other day about you coming to the board 4 months ago and addressing us right here. And John and I had argued about money many years ago, but we obviously understand you can't feed this thing without doing so. So I guess going back, Doc, is how do we change, how do we not talk about making this an entrepreneurial venue, but actually implement it, and how do we really engage?
Well, we've got a group of people, we've got some, and we're not looking for large numbers right now. We're looking for the volunteer. I told them today, nobody's obligated. I'm not coercing you. You're not going to be evaluated down, but we're going to be giving them a chance to step up. And there's people in that room, I know they're going to step up.
Oh, yeah, it's obvious.
And they're going to step up, and they're going to be working with Gary and myself over the next few months. And when it lands, when the plane lands, that they actually made a difference, people start buying into it, you're going to see it happen.
Yeah, and it's not going to happen tomorrow. And I know you don't mean that, Joe. But you're asking a good question. And part of what we talked about today is how do we inoculate ourselves against the immunity to change?
Especially, you know what, especially right now when the country is more divided than it's ever been divided. People don't really care about the bigger picture. They care about themselves. They care about their own lives. They care about, reducing inflation and saving money. I was listening to something the other day on the radio, and it was a very good, well-known political commentator. They happen to be Democratic, and I don't necessarily, that's not my venue. But what they said is everybody has now become disengaged. And it's really hurting this great country. While there are other countries out there that are just kicking our ass, and very clearly kicking our ass.
Yeah.
And we're losing that entrepreneurial spirit, I think, in our country.
We're going to get beat at our own game.
Totally.
For the last 2 years, I've been advising the government of South Africa, the Ministry of Education, the Department of Education, in South Africa, under a federal mandate to put entrepreneurial mindset in the entire K-12 curriculum. 10 years from now, that's going to have a huge impact. And we're going to get beat at our own game. That's a whole nother kettle of fish.
You know why? Because we believe our own bullshit.
Because what?
We have for a long time, are believing some of our own bullshit.
Yeah.
Pardon my
Yeah.
So Dan, I'm sure that you've already thought about this, but it just, I think, needs to be said. I'm on board with this. I think it's a great plan, and I think that either Gary or Dan, whoever made the comment, that everybody that we need to come up with new innovative ideas is already on campus. I think that's 100% right, but I can say this from my years of experience, just as a person and kind of hearing similar kind of directions, never framed exactly like this, but strangely enough, the Navy tended to espouse similar interests like this. They would encourage anybody, anybody from any rank, any background, if you have a good idea or you see a way we can do things better, more efficiently, safer, please come forward, let us know. The same basic principle, right, is that everybody here is capable of seeing something and coming up with a better idea or a better way to do it. But I can say this with a high degree of certainty, that the first and most important thing that we need to do is develop a plan for how these ideas are going to be run up the flagpole, if you will. Because I can say this with 100% certainty, that the first time that somebody, right, just whoever on campus, could be the guy driving the lawnmower, mowing the grass, says, hey, I've known for years that we could make things better by doing this. The first time that person, whoever he or she is, whether it's the guy driving the lawnmower or it's a vice president, steps up with an idea and they get ignored, or they get told no, or they get marginalized, the first time that happens, the word will spread around campus that this whole thing is crap, that it's garbage, and don't bother coming forward with any good ideas because nobody's interested, and that'll kill this thing quicker than anybody can get it started. So there's got to be a plan
There is a plan.
for the people who come up with an idea, right? It could be anybody. It could be something small. It could be, like Gary said, the sanitation worker that saved tens of thousands of dollars because they're on the front line out there and they can see exactly what the problems are. If that sanitation worker would have gone to whoever he or she went to and said, hey, we could save a lot of money for the city if we did this, and his boss or his coworker or the guy who runs the company said, oh, yeah, man, I don't think we can do that. That guy would have just gone right back onto the job. He'd have kept his mouth shut for the rest of his career and just kept on working, and that good idea would have died quicker than it came to fruition. And the word would have spread, don't bother, they don't care. So I think it's more important to come up with the plan and have in place a system where anybody who has an idea can communicate that idea to a person or a group of people who will not ignore them, who will not step off on a negative foot initially, right? That's a problem too. I mean, if I went to Gary right there and said, hey, Gary, I think you could do a better job in your presentation if you just put your watch on the other arm. And he said, well, I don't know about that. I mean, I'll think about it. That's probably going to kill it right there. That's it. Just that little bit of negativity is going to be the death of that whole thing. So I think it's very important that there be a very well stated, very well communicated, very clear plan of how anybody can communicate their ideas, and then the moment those ideas are communicated, that person has to feel that at least their idea is being considered. I mean, obviously, we're not going to implement every idea that comes from every direction, and I think most people are okay with that. They're fine with their idea not becoming the new way of things, so long as those people know for a fact that their idea was considered, that it was, really run out to see, how it would work and how it would play out. And so long as they're treated with some level of like, hey, that's a good idea, let's look into that. Even if it doesn't sprout legs and run, so long as they feel that they were honestly considered, those people will keep coming with ideas, and I think those people will encourage those around them to also come forward with ideas. But I could see this thing, not saying anything negative about VVC, I could see this thing in any organization dying a very quick death when the first person steps up and says whatever they're going to say, and somebody steps off on the negative foot, or they're ignored, or they're not taken seriously, or they're not treated like their idea has any value. And so I think before we even get down a road of, dreaming of the great ideas that are going to come rushing into the president's office, I think the first step is to establish that chain of communication or the plan as to how these ideas will be brought forward, and considered. So,
I think we've got a plan in place, Brandon, if I could address that.
Yes,
hard to hear,
please.
Gary, when you're that far from the mic.
Okay, can you hear me okay? Can you hear me okay, Brandon?
Oh, do you have a portable mic on?
I do. Did he turn it off?
Tim buys like he buys like dollar store batteries. They only last like 15 minutes, so you might be dead.
All right. Am I all right over there? My green light's on.
Nope. No, I can kind of hear you now.
Okay, yeah? Okay, so the plan is already in place. You're raising some really important questions, and this is, you know, part of it, part of the answer to the dilemma you're putting forth is that's what I was referring to, like we've got to create space for these ideas to gestate or germinate without the managerial, administrative, status quo defenders killing it before it has a chance to get out the door. Now, the other part of the answer here, Brandon, is what we're immersing the leadership team in is in this entrepreneurial process. It's an evidence-based process. It's not about, I got a good idea, let me go see if my boss will let me do it. It's, I have an idea, I want to find one or two friends, and I want to experiment with it and come up with evidence that it's useful before I even present it to anyone. So that's kind of where the guardrails are to help guard against what you're saying. And what you're saying is really, really important. Like the institutional antibodies will descend upon new ideas, just like we learned in 7th grade biology. They'll try to kill the foreign object. And that's what we're working with Dr. Walden to create some space where people have room to experiment in the margins. Like 5% time, just experiment on the fringes, not to come up with radical ideas. We're going to turn the college upside down. We're going to start, you know, doing crazy things. It's lots of little things we're trying on a small scale in providing evidence.
So my leadership style is one that works at empowering people.
You want out?
Can you hear me? Brandon, you hear me?
Yeah, sorry, my puppy wants
No,
out. I can
so-
hear you. I'm just going to let her out.
What I do is I come and work to not do the work, but to empower other people to do the work.
Here she comes.
Anecdotally, people ask me, what do I do around here? And I tell them, only the things I can't get someone else to do. Because my job is to get people empowered to be who they are and to bring out the best in them. That's why I said the brilliance is in the room. My job as a president is to help wake that brilliance up so that it comes to the top. And one of the reasons for having the meeting with the managers today, just one of the reasons, not the only, is to help them to not squelch the creativity that exists within their organization, their particular program. John Nolan gave one of the best examples illustratively. He didn't tell it, I was just there when he did it. But he told me, he said, I want you to come, this has been a year or two ago, maybe even before COVID, I don't remember. But anyway, he said, I'm going to invite you to lunch. I'm having the M&O, the grounds guys, to lunch. And so he said, we're having pizza. So I went over there we had it in the boardroom over in Building 10. And I sat there having lunch, and then I started listening. Actually, I know when this was. This was about the time COVID hit. And so he had just started working with these people directly because there was another person overseeing them prior to that. And they said to me, do you know, and I don't think he planted this to them, I think they just said it because he's not really like that. But they said, I have worked on this college for X number of years. It was many, like double digit. And no one has ever cared what I thought until I started working directly with John. And when I said, John, what about this ground cover? We've said I've known for years that this ground cover was really what we need to use instead of that other, that it was cheaper, that it wouldn't blow away and blah, blah, blah. And then the other one said yes, and I made an offer about some seed, and John said, yeah, let's do it. Those were grounds workers that were being empowered by my deputy superintendent of admin services that they had something to contribute. And that's how I do my work. Anybody that works with me, they know this, especially the people closest to me. I believe in empowering leadership. I am a servant leader in my style in the sense that I'm here because I'm serving. But I believe in empowering people. I could sweep the floor. I could vacuum the carpet as good as anybody. But is that what you pay a president to do? No, you pay me to sit down in a chair and put my elbow on the table and put my fist on my face and think. And figure out what it is we need to be doing and where we need to go. Like that little thinker statue. I always had one in my office until just recently. So, and that's what, Brandon, you're saying, is you have to empower people to feel safe to come forward. Because there is a history here, and this is that we're fighting is where that was not the case. And some of our managers would just automatically just squelch people. They wanted to do something great, and I've had a couple of them just recently go to HR and say, you know what, I thought we were going to do this. I'd come up with this idea. It seemed like everybody was on board, and then my supervisor came and said something totally different. I just feel like all of the air's out of my balloon now. And so that's one of the reasons that we had all that management there today, including our cabinet, so that we can get them to start thinking this way, that they know to empower people. I'm empowering them, and I want them to empower those that they oversee and supervise.
There's another
Good
piece.
thing, Dan, I know, I don't have any concerns about you, Dan, and I know you do your coffee break and invite anybody to come to the coffee break and say anything they want to say. And I know that if on that coffee break they manage to say something directly to you, I know you would listen. It's all the in between that.
Yeah, that's what I was talking about.
Me.
Yeah, so Brandon, there's some more nuance here, because I think the point that you raise is so important, and we did not talk about this today, but early on in this process, to your point, Brandon, what's so crucial is that we have small wins. That somebody steps up and feels the bat hit the ball, and they get some kind of traction on something, and we've got to promote the hell out of that. It doesn't need to be the big change in the department. It doesn't need to be, some groundbreaking thing, but we need to celebrate the small wins to signal the exact opposite of what you were talking about, Brandon. Just like some small change somebody figured out. Move the trash can across the room. It doesn't make any sense over there. Put it over there. I'm exaggerating a little bit, but and as those small wins are promoted, as they're acknowledged, people are going to climb on board.
But Gary, there's nothing wrong with, and I absolutely agree. We work with a very renowned Southern California developer he probably hasn't had to work for the last 20 years. Every time I talk to him, he says, Joe, I hit a ground single today. I hit a little single, I hit a little double. So why don't we incentivize our people to hit singles? But if somebody does have that idea, how do we, I love this conversation, but I feel like I'm going to leave here and it's going to be the same old thing tomorrow. Where can we incentivize an employee for coming up with a $250,000 idea? How do we do it? So there could be pushback right now. Doc, I'm not saying you, but let's say somebody in his position says, we can't do that. Well, that's exactly why we're here, to figure out how do we do it. I was challenged 2 years out of college as a college kid by a high school dropout, multi-mega millionaire to figure out, no, seriously,
Yeah.
okay? on a $350 million portfolio with 10% debt and $12 million in cash flow, I want a zero-based budget. A what? A what? This college has never gone back and said, you know why? We just keep adding another number to the column every year. So are we thinking out of the box by saying to finance, let's go back and start a zero-based budget? Are we really going to incentivize people and think out of the box? I mean, to get a habit through somebody, it takes 28 days. I fought smoking for 40 years. It took me 28 days to stop smoking forever. And I had to work at it every single time I put down a cigarette for 40 years.
Right. Here's what I want to say about that, Joe. We got to be careful about financial incentivizing when it comes to this kind of behavior, because it's probably going to undermine the intrinsic desire to do this. The people that I've worked with today, the people I worked with last July on Dan's leadership team, they're not looking for a financial reward, and the financial incentive could backfire in this environment. That's the literature on motivation.
So like what Brandon said, and Brandon brings up a great point. Where does that person take that idea that's not stymied? I can sit here as a trustee and tell you, I've had ideas stymied.
You've had ideas what?
Stymied.
Oh, yeah.
Because it wasn't that person or that superintendent or that president's idea.
Right.
Okay? I have people come to me all the time and it's not my idea, but it's like, wow, if that'll make my life easier,
Yep.
you're in.
Yeah.
So what Brandon said, how do we get 883 people to know where to take that idea so that it's not squashed by somebody right above?
Well, the same way you eat an elephant. The same way you eat an elephant, a bite at a time. So when a person comes forward with something and they feel empowered to do something with that, that's all the incentive they need. When they see that validation and they see that celebrated on stage, and I used an example today of a college I was at 20 years ago, where we brought student learning outcomes onto that campus. When we got the faculty, and just a handful, 5 faculty, that said, yes, we want to do this. The college wasn't doing it. I'm not going into all the details of it. But when those 5 faculty created student learning outcomes, measured them in their class, did it for 2 semesters, then we asked them to come, and this is when the college was not on board with this. We brought them to what they didn't call it that, but what we call here All College Day. We had those 5 faculty present to their colleagues how they had developed these student learning outcomes, how they had measured them, how they had gotten results, how they had changed their pedagogy, and what a difference that had made in the completion rates in their classroom, in the retention rates of that classroom. Those faculty didn't get any extra money for that. The fact that they got that recognition for having tried something in the margins. They didn't change their course outline of record. They didn't do a bunch of big stuff. They just changed some things in the margin that ended up actually saturating that entire institution.
Yeah.
And I told the longer version of that story today of how it became completely college-wide, where every single faculty member was doing that in improving their learning outcomes in their classes. So it's that when Gary said earlier, I don't remember now who you were quoting, maybe it was Maslow, someone like that, but that every human being has in them this desire to contribute and feel like they matter, right? It's like they say about children. What are the 2 things that every child has to know? Everything's okay with mom and dad, and I matter. That's every child wants to know those 2 things. Is my home safe and secure, and do I matter? And that is in every single person on this campus, even those that are soured and those that are bitter and those that are complainers and the naysayers. They still have that inside of them. And we'll eat this animal, I mean, this elephant one bite at a time until we get it eaten.
Yep.
And, you know, we already know from research you're never going to get everyone on board because that group will eventually leave and they're on their way out or whatever. And Gary showed that today in his presentation. But this is how this gets done. A bite at a time, validating people. That person's now positively on board, and they're going to, that's going to spread like a positive thing on campus, so you don't lose this immunity to change. I mean, that immunity to change doesn't affect the ability to change.
Right, it doesn't win.
Right.
Yeah, and we also talked today, Dr. Walden, about the different roles in organizational entrepreneurship. So I'm somebody working in the college. I find one friend, John over here, and I say, John, we got an idea. Like, I got an idea. Like, what do you think about this? And I get John to like, that's a cool idea. Let's start tinkering around with that idea in the margins. You find a friend and you follow the energy. Right? So if everyone in the organization is saying like that's a bad idea and there's legitimate reasons why it's a bad idea, maybe it's a bad idea. So we, you know, like to Brandon's point, like you can't give credence to every half-baked idea that comes across your desk. But what we're encouraging people to do is find a friend, find a colleague, and follow the energy. And there are other players in the domain. There are like champions, there are sponsors, there are managerial people who will kind of provide cover for you to give you the space to develop the idea, give you some time. Can you know, all right, you'll have a month, you'll have 2 months, whatever, work on this idea, experiment with it, see what you can come back with. Where's the evidence that this will work? This is not about, I came up with an idea and I went to my boss and my boss didn't listen to me. That's not what this is about. I want to be very clear about this. The onus for evidence of usefulness is on the individual, on the innovative person. It's not just come up with an idea and go to my boss and say, look at my great idea. Great ideas.
Right, but not everybody can do that. I'm always reminded of a story. Gary, you probably know it. You probably know where it came from. If you don't, you should probably look it up because I don't remember the company. But apparently many, many years ago, there was a particular toothpaste company that was in some dire straits. They needed to sell more toothpaste.
I know the story.
And so from all the top people in the company, they were trying to figure out how to sell more toothpaste. Well, of course, the marketing guys wanted to market harder. They wanted to spend more money on marketing. So spend money to make money. You know, the money guys, they wanted to figure out a way to make the toothpaste at a lower cost
Cheaper,
to
right,
increase
right.
their profit margin.
Yep.
You know, and the quality control people didn't want to reduce the quality of their product. And round and round they went trying to figure out how they were going to sell more toothpaste. As the story goes, one guy in the room, or one guy at the company, came up with the idea that actually worked. And the idea was so ridiculously simple. His idea was make the hole in the tube bigger.
Right.
Right?
Do what?
So
What was it?
Make the toothpaste hole bigger.
Oh, okay.
Make the hole bigger. And if you look, every single commercially sold tube of toothpaste these days has that size hole, which puts about 3 times as much toothpaste on the brush as what you actually need to brush your teeth. I don't recall the company that was, if it was Crest or Colgate or whatever. I'm good at remembering stories and I'm bad at remembering names and dates. But you look at that and you go, wow, I mean, that guy changed not just his own company's toothpaste game, but he changed the entire toothpaste industry because pretty much everybody utilizes that same size hole now in a tube of toothpaste.
You know,
But my point that I'm making with that is that the guy who came up with that idea, he didn't have the ability to just start pumping out tubes of toothpaste with a smaller hole. And so Dan's example speaks to that as well. The M&O guy or lady, we have a lot of lady M&O people, the person in M&O who said we need to switch what we're using as ground cover because the stuff we use now blows and it blows away and it clutters campus and whatever else, and there's this other stuff that's cheaper, it won't blow and it looks better. There's a lot of people on campus, like in any organization, who can't just start experimenting, on their own. They don't have the ability to purchase the products or go out and buy the thing. And I mean, certainly we don't necessarily want a bunch of people just doing everything their own way on campus, and doing it 20 different ways. So I hear what you're saying, Gary, and again, at an upper level, if you've got a vice president who comes up with an idea of how we could streamline the enrollment process, they're in a position where they can affect that change or conduct those experiments. But our M&O person with an issue with ground cover, they're not in a position to just start experimenting. And it's, I don't know, probably not an idea that really needs to be experimented with. It's just an idea that needs to be put on the table and to have somebody approve it and then make the change.
yeah.
So I just want to say that as a board member, because I would hate for anybody watching to listen to what you're saying, Gary, and say, oh, well, so the only way that our ideas count is if we're in a position to come up with the idea, experiment with the idea, test the idea, and then present findings that our idea is sound. Again, I think that could potentially stifle voices coming to the table. And I don't think that Dan's goal, and certainly not this board's goal, would be to stifle any good ideas, kill them in the cradle, as they say, for somebody not having the ability to go out and actually do all that background and research. So I think for the big ideas, obviously they would have to be tested and they'd have to be run up the flagpole, but even that,
You guys like that? Do you like the spotlight that you get? I don't send you copies of everyone, but where it shows that these are comments that people have made bragging on one another. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I read
Yeah.
that every month or so.
Well, you know how that got started here? One person just mentioned it. I overheard it. And I went to Gabby and I said, Gabby, let's do this. This is brilliant. And it is really not all that brilliant, but it has made a real impact. The coffee break thing. I just heard about that and thought, wow, that's a great idea. I'll have all the classified be able to come and sit down and have coffee with me. The Aspen Congress that we've had every month for almost 2.5 years now, that is a brain trust. Nobody's required to come. They come, the whole campus, and even our foundation and community members are invited. So whoever comes, and we hear ideas from every single person in the room. And because there's enough of us there we have them break up into groups. And so there is already a room on the campus for just those kind of ideas to happen. What I'm looking for, and one of the things I was looking for today, was that I didn't have managers squelching those in their department who want to do something more, who have an entrepreneur, want to try something entrepreneurial. And the other thing I wanted them to do was to create an atmosphere in their department to where people can be on the team and be able to express their ideas. You know, we have participatory governance on campus, and that is, of course, in adherence to the law, AB 1725. The whole idea behind AB 1725 is that every constituency gets to come forward with representatives and can be heard on any issue before a decision is made. The Senate makes only recommendations to me. They can't tell me what to do. The college council only can make recommendations to me. They don't tell me what to do. But I am loath to reject their ideas when they have shared them amongst themselves and come to me with a recommendation that they've thoroughly debated and they've passed it. And I'm thinking, well, that's the brains on campus. And it could be, so there's a lot of places on this campus for people to feel heard, to be heard, and to be validated. I don't want anyone feeling like that their ideas don't matter. Even people that have come to me, I'm thinking of someone right now, the most critical person that's approached me since I've been at this campus. I heard that person out. I offered to sit down with them, and of course they have chosen to not have any, not continue that conversation. I can't force that. I just go by, I say, hi, how you doing? Anything you want to share with me today? And give them an opportunity, but they hide from me, even though I was open and, you just do the best that you can do. And I heard you, Brandon, saying you didn't think, you weren't addressing me, but it starts with me. I set the tone. That's the leader's job. It's the president's job. When people ask me, what's the president's job? I say it is to set the tone. Because there's a lot of things about my job. My job description is 4 pages long. Not a human being on earth could do all those things. So, but to set the tone of the college that this is a safe place. But not everybody feels that it is. And sometimes I'm misinterpreted. I guess I didn't give a faculty member enough attention on a particular day. I didn't even realize who it was till he had passed. But he wrote me a pretty ugly email over the holidays. And because I didn't give him enough stop and give him more conversation. I could make excuses for it, but it just happens. And I don't know exactly what was happening on that day, but something. Anyway, you get the point.
I just want to say something sort of back to the Brandon thing, if I could, for just a minute. Brandon, you could listen to this podcast. I interviewed the guy that's leading the charge in this Albuquerque thing. His name is Tom Darling. And you listen to my interview with him on my podcast, The Entrepreneurial Mindset Project. But the thing that he said that I think is germane here to what Dr. Walden is trying to do, and he said most of the initiatives people are doing under this new entrepreneurial initiative are not significant. But he said lots of these little efforts add up to culture change. And that's really the point here. It is, if people can come up with ideas, they can be simple little ideas that don't really amount to much. That's what we need to cultivate and celebrate. And every once in a while, a bigger, more meaningful idea will come up. But it's really the aggregate that ultimately, I think that Dr. Walden is trying to get to, is the culture shift. And there's another nuanced point to be made here that we did talk about today. And a lot of times people will say, okay, I want to come up with an idea. I want to double enrollment. I want to, change. They want to cure cancer. They want to solve hunger. They want to end homelessness. And we're encouraging them, okay, that's great. You got big ambition, but you got to break that down. You can think big. We want you to think big, but you got to start small. Because if you just want to cure cancer, like the likelihood that you're going to make any kind of an impact is very low. So how do you reduce that? How do you solve hunger for one family or one student and start like that? So that's part of the overall plan also. I just wanted to throw that out there.
Yeah, I'm totally on board with that, Gary.
Good.
So does anybody else have anything that they want to add, or do you think that that's a good stopping point?
I think we talked long enough to cure your COVID.
Not quite. I'm losing steam, guys, so.
Jen, President,
I'm Jen, it's fine.
I just want to close on one thing, because I really appreciated what Brandon said. I think, Gary, at the end of the day, and I am convinced that there's a great intention here, okay? I was a bad kid until my father got it through my head the hard way, that actions speak louder than words. So I guess the actions is what we'll see.
That's right.
All right.
That's right.
So on that note, if everybody else is satisfied with their participation, we can get a motion to adjourn, if everybody's good with that.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Thank you, Gary.
Thank you,
Thank
Gary.
you all. Thank you, everyone. Appreciate it. Thank you. Good.